Is it worth building your own speaker cabinet? Now, the Marshall SV20H Studio Vintage Plexi 20 watt valve amp head, it needs a cabinet, and while it sounds great through my Badcat 1x12 extension cabinet, I was offered a deal where I just had to check out the Marshall SV112 Studio Vintage Speaker Cabinet, because after all, this is meant to pair perfectly with the amp head. Hello viewer, my name's Stu. Please do check out the rest of my channel as it covers my return back to playing and recording guitar after a 40-year break, and a big thanks to all who subscribe, like, share, hit the bell for notifications. Sorry if maybe feeling a bit or sounding a bit blocked up. Just got over the man flu, so still kind of hanging over me. So a quick note for all those who are awaiting my next video in regard to the custom shop Telecaster type build project, which will be video number 5. I am at the stage of relicking both body and neck, and that is a time-consuming part of the project which it really needs to be done with care. So stay tuned, video 5 coming very soon. In fact, it should be next week. Now, if you've got any questions regarding the build, please do let me know, and I'll address them in a final video where I'll look at the pros and cons and the full costs and the time that was involved in that build. Okay, back to Marshall cabinets. In days gone by, I was quite familiar with changing out speakers, particularly in guitar cabinets and building PA cabinets. But for a period of time, I did work in the high end of the engineering side of the hi-fi industry, and so you could say I'm familiar with expensive speakers and enclosures, and I do appreciate products that are designed and produced to either meet a practical solution within a given price range, or they're specifically engineered to fulfill a specific role. Now, throughout my guitar journey these past few years, I've been happy to go with the speakers that came with the amplifiers that I've been testing, and my main amplifier to date is a Badcat Black Cat, which comes with a custom Celestion speaker designed for the Badcat Black Cat amplifier. And I will say I love the clean and crunch tones that I get from that combination amplifier, and you can see a review on that on my channel under the unboxing playlist. Now, when the Marshall SV20H Studio Vintage Plexi 20 watt valve amp head arrived here in the studio, that was put to the test using an extension cabinet, which again was a Badcat Black Cat 1x12 model, and again you can see that review on my channel under the unboxing playlist. However, I had been toying with the idea of building my own speaker cabinet. Perhaps maybe you've thought about that as well. And I wanted to see if there would be any benefit to pairing my Marshall Vintage SV20 amplifier head with a different speaker arrangement. But doing the maths, particularly the time involved, that's on top of all the materials that you need. I just felt for a 1x12 cabinet, it really was not worth it. The maths just didn't add up. So I looked to purchase a second-hand cabinet, preferably one without a speaker, but there was nothing on the marketplace that really got my attention. And I also contacted Marshall to see if they'd sell me a cabinet without a speaker in it. And unfortunately, they said no. So I just thought, never mind, I'll just leave it for now. And then a couple of weeks later, I got a great deal with an authorized music store for Marshall. And this particular cabinet, it could have been a demonstrator, I'm not sure, but in mint condition. And it was just far too good a price to pass by. Now, particularly as the Marshall Vintage 1x12 speaker cabinet is designed to be paired with the Marshall SV20 amplifier. Now, in conversation with others who own the Marshall SV20 Head Mojo-tone speakers, and specifically their vintage range, crops up in many YouTube videos, and so more on that later. So coming up, the Marshall SV112 Studio Vintage Speaker Cabinet, what's in the box and its specifications. Number 2, what it sounds like in use with the Marshall SV20 Head. Number 3, points of interest. Number 4, conclusion, final remarks. So without further ado, number 1, the doorbell rang. And a large box was delivered, and inside the Marshall SV112 Studio Vintage Speaker Cabinet, weighing in at approximately 11 to 12 kilograms, so quite a nice weight for most of us. Made in the UK, Marshall is still going strong at its factory in Bletchley, Milton Keynes. This 1x12 cabinet is made specifically as a match for the SV20 Studio Vintage Head, and as you can see, it sports the same black textured vinyl covering, gold piping around the vintage look grille cloth, which is adorned with the classic Marshall badge. A top handle makes it easy for transportation, while the open back design shows the Celestion V12 70-watt speaker rated at 16 ohms and the 1/4-inch speaker jack socket. Number 2, how does it sound? I'm going to be playing a few chords and notes, both clean and gritty, just to show, yes, it does the job perfectly well. And I'm going to be using my trusty Stratocaster here with Fat 60 pickups. Now, setting the Marshall SV20 Head, I'll first of all set it for a clean tone with the controls set towards a kind of middle of the road setting. I'll quickly demonstrate the 5 selector settings on this particular Strat. Position 2. Position 3, middle. Position 4. Position 5, bridge. So same again, but now driving the amplifier for an overdriven sound. Now I'm using an attenuator for this, and that's going to have a bearing on what's going on with the speaker, but more on that shortly. So position 1, neck. Position 2. Position 3, middle. Position 4. Position 5, bridge. Number 3, points of interest. So the speaker that comes with the SV112 cabinet handles the amplifier very well. Chords and notes are clean, and if you turn the volume up, there's no sign of distortion. It is clear and punchy. Now, as I mentioned, I used an attenuator when driving the amplifier because it's super loud. You can see that review on my channel under the unboxing playlist. This will have a bearing on how the speaker reacts, as the attenuator is soaking up a lot of heat. Now, this is quite an involved topic. It's not important in regard to how I use my equipment for recording projects, but for you, if you're playing live, you might want to look into that more. So what you've heard is not a technical audio test, it's a general overview of what to expect for this kind of setup. In regard to the difference between the Bad Cat Black Cat cabinet and the Marshall SV112, both with Celestion speakers, to be quite frank, there's just not enough difference to bother doing a side-by-side comparison. And given that the Bad Cat cabinet is definitely a higher quality build, which may or may not influence the tone. If I was to do a speaker comparison, I would need to do a direct replacement within the actual Marshall SV112 cabinet itself. Now, I played for nearly 10 years way back in the 70s, early 80s, through cabinets with 150 watt amplifiers close to full bore, and without doubt, it's a whole different experience having a Marshall stack almost punching you with a wall of sound. And yes, the speaker types that are designed for high volume really will come into their own when used like that. However, other than those who still use a wall of speaker cabinets at live events, the direction has to bring everything down in size, and for a host of reasons. It's not simply to do away with the physical cabinet altogether and use simulation software, but certainly it's much easier when you've got smaller things to carry around. It's better for your hearing, and there's more control for the guy on the sound desk. Now, for what I need within a studio controlled environment using an attenuator for overdrive work, the speaker in this cabinet, it does the job. But the question is, will I replace it with one of the Mojo Tone's vintage offerings? Well, all I'm going to say is, if one comes up at a good price, I might just give it a try. Number 4, conclusion, final thoughts. Well, as always, no one paid me to mention any of the products shown. It's just my own opinions. The cabinet, it's well made, although not the same standard as the Bad Cat cabinet that I mentioned earlier. It is more expensive, and you get a very nice protective cabinet cover. Certainly in this cabinet, the speaker suits the amplifier, and it certainly fits well in the studio, and it's going to play an important role for my music projects. Now, I know it's not important, but I'm not convinced about the physical dimensions of this cabinet. It looks almost too small to me in relation to the amp head. It looks like the cab. It could have done with just being a couple of inches taller, as it looks a little bit top heavy the way it is. It's not important, it was just a kind of design observation. And also a cover would have been nice, Marshall. So, do think about subscribing, hit the bell to get notifications, like and share. As always, it really does help the channel. Keep an eye out for that custom build video number 5, and that should be coming next week. Do check out my channel playlist, which covers my journey back to playing and recording guitar after a 40-year break. Lots of equipment reviews as I seek out the gear that I use in my recording sessions. So, whether you're a newcomer or an ongoing player, or like me, an old hand returning to guitar playing, I always take time to engage with folks who take time to comment. So until next time, the journey continues. You take care.